on. All right. So that being said, I'm going to let my panelists introduce themselves, and then we're going to just ask them some questions and give you a chance in the audience to ask questions as well, so you can communicate with us through the chat function or the Q&A function. I'll ask my panelists while someone else is talking. They can feel free to answer any of those questions in the chat or any of the questions in the Q&A. So that way there's some constant engagement. And towards the end, if we have some time, or we'll try to leave time for just asking any questions. So with that, I'm going to be quiet, and I'm going to start off with Tess Snyder from Northwestern Mutual. Let her introduce herself, and then she can point it to the next panel.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Roderick. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tess Snyder, and I am the campus recruiter from Northwestern Mutual. And I am locally in Durham, North Carolina, so very close to Chapel Hill, UNC. I'm so happy to be here. I've been interviewing quite a few college students who are looking for internship opportunities or, postgraduate opportunities for full-time. So happy to give any tips or advice, answer any questions, and kind of just network with you all as well. So thank you.
Awesome. I can go next. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you all today. Just thinking, to be a student at UNC Chapel Hill again, you all have so many opportunities in front of you. The world is your oyster, and we're all just cheering you on. But I'm Daniel Hooper. I'm an employee relations consultant at Cisco Systems, and I'm also a UNC alumni, obviously, as I just said. And I'm a part of our People and Communities organization at Cisco. And just to start off, Cisco is a Fortune 100 technology company located in RTP in Research Triangle Park, so just down the road from UNC, and we're in a lot of different technology spaces from networking to security to routing and switching. We're all over the map. And so I'm a part of our HR function. We actually call it People and Communities, and my team is responsible for investigating any concerns with our policies or with legislation like Title VII, the Americans with Disabilities Act, things of those nature. And so that's what I do, and so excited to be here and answer your questions.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marianne Brain. I'm the Director of Recruiting and Alumni Relations with Artist Year. So we are an arts education nonprofit and service year organization, an AmeriCorps organization. So essentially what we do is we take recent arts graduates from all different artistic disciplines and place them within high poverty schools throughout the country that need more assistance bolstering their arts education programming. And we serve schools again in different regions, but specifically we are located within North Carolina, within an area called Moore County. So just why I'm really happy to be here and speak with you all about opportunities we have. But yeah, essentially my role is I'm constantly looking at young people's resumes, chatting with them, interviewing them. So I have a lot of tips for you all that I'm really excited to share. Yeah, and I'm really excited to be here today. Thanks.
Great. And I'm going to see Douglas Mason's here now, so I'm going to turn it over to him to moderate the panel and do everything else. So again, thank you from on behalf of University Career Services.
Hi, everyone. And Roderick, thank you, sir. There is nothing better than working with people who have your back. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. So welcome, guys. It's so nice to meet you in person and not just over email. I'm delighted that you're here. And I'm so pleased that we're going to have a good, robust discussion today. So let me take a moment to set the tone. So we live in a post-pandemic world. Perhaps it's a little aggressive to call it post-pandemic yet, but I think that for many of our students and for many working professionals, we're all adjusting to how work might be a little bit different now. Things ain't what they used to be, as Duke Ellington would say. So one of the things I'm really curious about, or I hope that we can steer our comments in this direction, is really focus on people who may be new to this whole interview business. Because if you've been in college for a couple of years during the pandemic, you may just now be arriving at a point where you're able to begin interviewing, moving your career forward a little bit. So with that in mind, we convened some of the smartest people we could find, and we just wanted to get out of their way and let them share their expertise and talk. So I shared some sketches of questions with you all, and I want this to be much more of a conversation than a lecture. So let's talk and have fun with it. Marianne, if I may start with you, give us your top mojo 1 or 2 tips that you think really make people effective when it comes to preparing for an interview, getting ready.
Well, I mean, number one, I would say research the organization that you're applying for. I think that's one of the most helpful tips I can give. You know, it says a lot when you get into an interview and you know what their mission is, know what their vision is. So just do some research about the organization. And then number 2, I would say practice. I, for one, when I first started interviewing for jobs, would get very nervous when having to speak about myself, which is completely normal. It's not really a natural thing to talk yourself up. But what I would always do would just write down a list of, those common questions that you get through interviews, and also, some based off that research that I did about the org. And I would just practice with a friend, practice with, family, practice in the mirror if you don't have anyone to practice with. It's just kind of to get more comfortable, talking yourself up and talking through those things. Those are probably the 2 biggest things, because once you're more comfortable, then you're more willing to just have a real conversation with someone rather than just, spitting out facts about yourself.
Sure, that we've always kind of operated under the assumption that anything can be improved if you just repeat it enough times. Do you think that's accurate?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think once you get into that place where you feel more comfortable and feel, more at ease talking through those things, it just comes more naturally, and you're, better equipped to feel more confident. The more you practice, the better it gets.
So we'll get to the how we actually do that in a moment. But Tess, in the meantime, what are your tips right out of the gate?
Yeah, actually, my 2 tips line up with Marianne's perfectly. As she was saying them, I was like, those are exactly the 2 tips I was going to give as well. I think researching the company and understanding kind of what you're getting yourself into is extremely important. Oftentimes an interviewer will ask, what do you know about Northwestern Mutual? What have you heard? What brought you to this conversation? And making sure you have a great answer for that and are able to talk about the mission and what we do as a company is very important. It shows us you've done your due diligence ahead of. And then mine was also practice in front of a mirror. It allows you the opportunity to see your body language, see your tone. Another good tip is recording yourself, answering practice questions, because you'll hear yourself going, like, and those kind of filler words. So you can try to filter those out and, really practice what you're going to show as an answer. So those are my 2 tips.
Superb. Daniel, you're next, sir.
Yes, absolutely. I think researching, right, the company is a great thing. I think researching the job description can be especially helpful. That's actually the one document before I go into an interview. I look at the job description just one more time, because it will tell you not only about the company, but it'll tell you about what they're looking for in a role, from qualifications to what you'll actually be doing. And if you can pick up on some of those buzzwords, we may call them, of, maybe in a role like mine, we're looking for somebody with a high degree of emotional intelligence. That's something we put in the job description. So if you can bring up that term, I think that's super helpful and may allow you to stand out. I also think it's helpful to put yourselves in the shoes of the person doing the interview. If you had a team, right, if you were interviewing for a role in your own company, what would you be looking for? And think about your answers, and how would that come across to you as the interviewer? So kind of switch those roles up.
So I would say that those are excellent starting points for ways to think about this. So let's focus on how we might do it, because that sounds good. But if I don't know anything about Artist Year or Northwestern Mutual or Cisco, how would I get this information?
I think you can do it in a variety of ways. I think you can, obviously, we love doing online research, Googling it, right? That's a starting point. I think the next step, right, to make yourself maybe stand out even more could be to network and actually talk to people who are doing the job. Maybe if you have a first round interview, ask the question, hey, is there anyone I could speak to that maybe who does the job now that would give me some experience or their perspective? And that would give you some insider information and make the person giving the interview think, wow, that they know that, like only people that work here know that. So that's kind of a cool way to stand out.
Tess and Marianne, I see lots of heads shaking. How would you go about doing it? Tell me about your sleuthing strategy.
Yeah, I think Google is everyone's best friend. I'll spend so much time just on the website exploring, a lot of the time there's a hidden information in the website that you can really discover and hone in on and bring up in the interview that shows your due diligence, like I mentioned earlier. Another great tool is most companies, most individuals who work at a company have LinkedIn. So going ahead and connecting with the recruiter you've been in contact with, anybody, like Daniel said, if you're networking, if you're reaching out to people, connect with them on LinkedIn, look at their posts, look at the company's post and just see what they're sharing and what's important to them. And that gives you an idea if it aligns with what your values are.
Very good. Marianne?
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Kind of a next step to that too, I would say is, if people are willing, if you do connect with someone on LinkedIn that's from either that organization you're interested in, or even within that industry, just asking for, an informational interview about what, that position is like, about what the organization is like, if it's specific to that organization. And just getting more of that insider information for you to help you in the interview process, but also help yourself to see if that, position is really the right role that you're looking for. Yeah, I'm a big fan of informational interviews. I did so many, and, they can also help you network in ways that's a lot more structured as well.
So how might you execute that? Walk me through some of the steps that you could do to pull that off.
Yeah. So, if you're connecting over LinkedIn, one way to go about it is just simply, introduce yourself, say how you kind of have found out about this specific person, and just be honest in that you just really want to learn more about what the role is like, what the industry or organization is like. And just ask for maybe 20 minutes of their time, either over video chat, over the phone. I do quite a few informational interviews with candidates all the time who are interested in, learning more about our organization before they even, apply. But I think you'll find more often than not, people are really interested or willing to talk about their journey and willing to, share that insight with you. So yeah, over LinkedIn. Another way is if you get someone's email information, you can kind of do it in the same sort of format, essentially introduce yourself, say what you're interested in, and just ask for, a small set of time. It would definitely surprise you how many people would be willing to talk to you about their journey.
So one of the things we work with students to understand is that, mechanically, so how do we walk this out? In your LinkedIn connection request, you can add a little note, right? So the note is a powerful thing to add. So we said, never send the genero invitation because you blow your chance to introduce yourself to that person. Do you think that's sound advice? I want to make sure I'm not telling them anything wrong,
Yeah, no, I'd say so.
Excellent. All right. I know that some students feel nervous about using LinkedIn because they're people that they don't know. But my thought was always that if you share a professional interest with someone, even if you're in a different place in your career, you have a starting point to begin a conversation. So you're not a random because you're interested in the same thing professionally. That's a hard thing to keep in mind, though, sometimes when you're the one trying to navigate LinkedIn and figure out who to contact. Excellent. Thank you, guys. Let's move forward a bit. So let's assume that we're in the interview process, or we have our invitation, or maybe it's even interview day. What are a couple of things that really make a candidate stand out? There's all this talk about selling yourself and being different and all of that. And we do a great job of mentioning how important that is, but we don't tell you how to do it. So from the people who know, what are some ideas about how to stand out? Daniel, would you start, sir? Do you mind?
Sure. I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to. So I think a couple things come to mind. One is not only do they know about our company and they can talk about what we do, but show a passion, show an energy behind what we do. I mean, if I was interviewing somebody to come into Cisco, I would expect at a basic level that they could in an elevator pitch summary say what we do. But if they talk about Cisco is changing the world with its technology, here's an example that resonates for me. That's like, wow, they really want to be here. So that's something that really excites me, and I can see it excites them. And then the other piece is just resonating with our philosophy. And when I say philosophy, for my team, it's like culture, right? So if they are able to, not only talk about the culture that Cisco employs, but also, again, show that energy around it. I love this element of Cisco's culture, and I see Cisco putting that into action in this specific way. So it shows the research, but then it shows the passion and energy behind it.
So wonderful. Just in case somebody isn't familiar, what, in your opinion, is an elevator pitch?
Yes, elevator pitch. That's just a quick summary. Imagine if you are on an elevator with someone and they say, tell me about you. We're going up to the 10th floor. We just have a few seconds. I want to hear about you. Or maybe you meet a CEO of a company you want to work with and they say, tell me about yourself. Your response then is your elevator pitch. It's quick. It gets straight to the point. It hits the high points that make you stand out.
Excellent. Thank you. Tess, how do you stand out at Northwestern Mutual? And guys, feel free to talk about your specific company. If there are things that are unique to your culture, share those with us.
Awesome. Yeah. And one more thing about the elevator pitch, I think it's awesome to have that prepared for any career fairs, virtual or in person. That's something that you're going to want to have handy and ready to speak on when you're walking up to a booth, an employer in the career fair. So that's just another tip of when to use an elevator pitch. I have a couple of things that kind of stand out to me. So we are in a virtual environment. Many of our interviews are virtual. I think if you're able to wear a nice professional outfit, that would really stand out. Whether it's just a button up or for ladies, it's a nice blouse, just makes you look prepared and, professional. And this is an interview for an internship or professional role, so you want to showcase that. Many times this is a first impression, so just keep that in mind. Is these first impressions go a very long way, and it really stands out to how you hold yourself. So if it is virtual, having a nice background, whether it's a fun one like this Northwestern Mutual logo, or it's just the background of your room or your office inside your house, just making sure you're thinking of all those aspects that come together for a great interview. And then lastly, kind of bouncing off of Daniel, being enthusiastic, asking questions, attentive, just making it more conversational really stands out and is an easier interview for most of the interviewers, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Thank you. Mary Ann?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of similar things to say. I think overall for our org specifically, if someone's really invested in our mission, that's something that we really care about. We're, again, a nonprofit organization. I will say that likely you'll find the same sort of thing with most nonprofits is if you're really mission aligned with what the work is that you're doing every day. It's amazing to kind of show that within your interview and, express that passion for the work. But then also in general, I think with our program, because we are more aligned with, recent graduates that come through our program, we're often looking for, you to share your experience, what you know, but also areas that you want to improve upon and grow. I think that's also something, just know that you have, just knowing you have the ability to reflect. I think that's a big plus. Also, in general, just letting your personality come through a little bit. I know sometimes during interviews, it can be really tempting to just, again, kind of robotically read off what you have on your resume or kind of like regurgitate that. But it's really nice to, hear elements of your own personality, again, your passion for the work, have that aspect come through that's a little bit more memorable. And yeah, again, ask questions at the end of the interview, asking questions about the org, about the day-to-day, well-researched questions also show that sort of investment, and really make you stand out a little bit more.
So you mentioned it's okay to let your personality sneak in a little bit. How does one kind of read the room and learn that line where business and personal merge, and what's appropriate and what isn't? Because sometimes that takes a certain amount of experience and trying it over and over again. Give us some advice on that. What's worthy of consideration and what should probably be kept to yourself?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think number one, it's kind of about reading the room, or if it's a virtual interview, reading whatever your interviewer is doing. If I would take their cues. So if you're in the room or, speaking with someone who is more polished, who is staying a little bit more formal, then perhaps that's kind of how the route you should take. But if you're speaking with someone, often I usually like my interviews to be a little bit more conversational. I like to have a little bit more of a dialogue rather than just me asking questions the entire time. If that's the case, then you can open up a little bit more. If your interviewer makes a quick joke, I'm sure that's okay for you to share a little bit more of your personality in that way. But definitely just keeping in mind that still it's a professional setting, but again, you can definitely let little bits of yourself, shine through in that sort of way too.
So thank you, Marianne. Northwestern Mutual and Cisco are different cultures, I would suspect, than Artist Year. So what is different in your organizations? Is this okay where you work? Tess, what do you think?
Yes, for me personally, I completely agree. I like the dialogue. I give those cues during an interview because it allows the interviewee to feel more comfortable to show those little tidbits of personality. So I do agree. If they're giving you cues that you notice it's a little bit more conversational, follow up with that, give into what they're giving you. But if it is that more kind of professional, asking questions and then turning it around to you asking questions at the very end, definitely follow that format. But yes, at Northwestern, it is more casual.
Yes, and it's casual at Cisco as well. Now, I think if you had gone back, to the 1980s when we were formed, you may find something different. And I think that raises a point that interviews are not only for an employer to understand what you bring to the table, but you need to understand what does the employer bring to the table. If I got on an interview with a company and they were very stiff and rigid and wouldn't let me, express myself, I wouldn't want to go continue with the process. And you all are fortunate that we're in a job market, right? That's an employee or a candidate centered market, right? Companies can't get enough, right, qualified talent. So be choosy, be picky, and use that interview to see if it's a fit for you as well.
Couldn't have said it better. Thank you. I want to get a bit more tactical, if I may, about certain questions. So when I was coming through, and then in my experience working with a lot of students over the years, that innocuous little tell me about yourself question is like a whole mood, right? So, so first of all, is it important? That's kind of the softball question. I suspect it's important because it's often the first thing that's asked. But how in the world do you make sense out of something as broad as tell me a little about yourself? Oh, I should call on someone. You're waiting for me, huh? All right. Marianne, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. I mean, it can be a tricky one. It can feel like it kind of is a trick. To be honest, I don't even ask that question because I feel like it makes it feel like more of a trick to folks. But I will say that, advice for answering that question, I would say definitely, again, go back to thinking about what the role is and how, when you're answering that question, definitely tell your professional experience and journey, but relate it back to that role. That's usually how I would go about it. But usually what I ask instead is, why the applicant is interested in pursuing this role and how do they think their experience so far has gotten them to this point that they're interested in that role. Just because I feel like it's usually a little bit more illuminating on my end, just because, again, that role can feel tricky. And I will say in general, when they say, tell me about yourself, I, in the past, when I was first interviewing, would say, everything I did since high school up until that point. That's not really what you're like, what we're looking for when we're asking that question. But yeah, I will say, as long as you're tailoring it again to kind of the experience that the role entails, and kind of speaking to your own experience, and connecting those things, that's usually the route I would go about.
So it's kind of a reverse chronological thing. We begin with the audience in mind. It's not just, I had a presentation teacher once who said that most speeches started with the phrase, I was born at a very early age. It's not, we can do better than that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Daniel, how would you break this question apart?
So I think what's important here to realize, I talked earlier about putting yourself in the shoes of the person interviewing you. The person interviewing you for a job is probably very busy. They have a lot of other priorities going on in their job and career. And, your interview is going to be, frankly, a small section of their day. And so they want some way to walk away from that interview remembering you. What stands out about you as a candidate? Oh, that was the one that did the AmeriCorps assignment, or that was the one that had the internship at X company, and did this really cool project. So if you can, not only walk through, some of your highlighted experiences, but just share something that makes you stand out. What makes you stand out from all the other candidates? What experience or skill do you bring to the table that makes you stand out? Because we as interviewers, right, we need a quick way to remember candidates as we kind of continue down the process. So use that as an opportunity to stand out.
Excellent. So Tess, do you primarily recruit for sales? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, so that's a great question.
Does that make it different at all?
I do ask this question. I'm going to be completely honest, because it is a chance to sell yourself. I don't look for a drawn out long response, if I'm being completely honest, because I think Daniel said it best. Like, we do have many things going on in our day-to-day lives, and this is just, 30 minutes, and it's your time to really stand out. So picking those, doing your research. And I think we've talked about this a couple times, but relating it back to who you are and your interest to stand out is huge. But yes, it is definitely a selling yourself opportunity. And whether that's through one experience you did through college or high school, or an organization you're a part of, or on the executive board, make sure to mention that and touch in on why that can benefit your ability to do that job.
Terrific. So allow me to speak to the students on the call directly. I know we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 50. Guys, if you're interested in creating this answer for yourself, it is something that we think you can be developed and practiced, and our career coaches can help you with that. So hit us up on the UCS website, and we can help you begin the construction of something that will come up time and time again as you grow your career. And I was going to say, we should open it up for some questions from students, and I will, Roderick is still on the call, and I can watch the chat as well. So we'll continue with the prepared questions that we have, and then when GEMS and student questions comes up, we'll absolutely give those an audience as best we can too. So to that point, Lindsay asked, so for the tell me about yourself question, should we answer with our elevator pitch, or is that not enough information? So I have an opinion, but I'd rather hear from the panelists. So what do you guys think? Is that kind of the same question, elevator pitch, tell me about yourself? Are they the same thing? Anyone who would like to answer?
I would say more or less, right? I mean, I certainly wouldn't, Lindsay asked, is that enough information? I mean, I've had folks who answer the question, tell me about yourself, with a 6 or 7 minute response in a 30-minute interview. And I'm just sitting there like, oh goodness, like this is good information, but it's like, I have questions that we want to ask as the interviewer. And so, make sure if it's your elevator pitch, I think that's okay, but make sure it's concise and fairly straight to the point. That's my opinion.
Do you guys have anything to add there? You did good job, Mr. Hooper. You covered it. All right. Let's pivot. Let's talk about the other question that inspires fear and dread and heart palpitations. And that's the weakness question. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Right. Daniel just rolled his eyes. I think the whole world rolls their eyes at that question. So what do we do about those so-called negative questions about your greatest weakness? What are people looking for when they ask you that? Mary Ann, would you like to start?
Sure. I love this question. Again, I think, like I mentioned earlier, often what makes a candidate stand out to me is someone who has the ability to reflect on their experiences and has the ability to talk about, the challenges they've had and how they're either working on those things or growing from those things. What I look for is if somebody acknowledges, maybe they're someone who's a procrastinator, or that's something they've had an issue with in the past, acknowledging that, but then saying, these are the tools that I put in place to help me so I do not procrastinate. Or, I could probably give more examples, but essentially just saying like, these are the things I put in place, or this is what I have done to help myself with this weakness.
But so what I hear is that the focus really should be on describing what you've done about this issue, not just explaining how awful it was, right?
Yeah, you definitely still want to say like, acknowledge that you have weaknesses. You're not perfect. You shouldn't say, I don't have any weaknesses, or I know some people try to just say that and move on. But we want to know that you're, every person, no one's perfect. So, but yeah, definitely talk about the ways that you're actively trying to overcome whatever that weakness is or that challenge is. But with the acknowledgement that it does exist.
Certainly. Is it either Tess or Daniel? What do you think?
Go ahead, Daniel.
Okay. I'll admit my weakness is hiding my facial expression. So I did roll my eyes, Douglas, because I just, that question also makes my heart sink. But
I didn't mean to call you out. And please call me Doug. Nobody calls me Douglas, but
no, yes.
Please
okay. We'll do. Yes. No, thank you for that. But no, that is my weakness. And I like to think of this question as what is something you're developing right now? And that's something I'm working on. I know we're laughing about it, but in this virtual world, right? And in the work that, my team and I do, it's so important to keep that neutral, right, expression and not give away anything that you may know. And so, I talked to my leadership talked to my manager about this, saying, hey, this is something I'm developing, I'm working on. And I think that shows a certain humility, right? To say like, I have weaknesses, as Mary Ann said, and but I'm doing something about it. I'm somebody who's driven, who wants to improve, because companies want people who are going to focus on their own development and continue to become more and more of an asset for the company.
Right. What do you think, Tess?
They said it perfectly. Honestly, I don't even know if I want to add anything, because I completely agree with everything that's been said. Just showing that you're working on it and building that weakness to a strength is what I would say.
Very good. Very good. Well, let's move on. So hopefully now it is less of a landmine for folks, because I know it does lead to nerves, and the interview process can be nerve-wracking anyway. So anything that we can do in conversation with guys like you is designed to help reduce the mystery and voodoo and weirdness that's a part of this conversation about interviewing in business, because it's an important conversation for both folks involved. Let's move on a little bit. So are there any mistakes that we should avoid? And I know that question is sort of the converse to what we've already talked about how you should prepare and get ready. But are there any things that you've seen in your experience where students should really know, that probably should avoid that one? What do you think? Tess, we'll start with you this time.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a couple in mind, but honestly, most of the time I haven't seen too harsh of a mistake. I think just holding yourself in a professional manner, and we touched on this earlier as well, there can be a fine line between showing your personality too much. So I think, steer clear of any inappropriate language or statements. Obviously, that is a no in any interview setting. And sometimes it can happen on accident. And so just make sure to try your best to steer clear away from any of those unprofessional words. Know who you're talking to. It would be really inappropriate if you use the wrong name or acknowledge the wrong person. That would be a pretty big mistake in my opinion. So just know who you're talking to, and address them by their name. That shows that you're confident in addressing them. And then I mentioned this earlier as well, but the filler words, try your best not to use those filler words, because we pick up on it, and it just shows, we all know you're nervous. We can be nervous as well, but just try your best to practice and not have those filler words in between statements or words in general.
Great. So let's dig a little bit. So I appreciate your answer. One of the things I just thought of is, you mentioned it's important not to use inappropriate language, of course. Are there things that could ever come to the candidate in the form of a question that aren't inappropriate? Can we speak to that? Daniel, I know you do employer relations and investigations and you do HR legal oriented things on behalf of the company. So are there things as a candidate that we should be aware of? If somebody asks us this, maybe it's not a good sign. What do you guys think?
Well, first of all, I think it's a big mistake is not having any question at all, right? You should definitely have a question. I've had interviews where people say, no, I don't have any questions. And I'm like, where's that inquisitive nature? But I don't know. I probably would say any kind of question that asks about, I actually had a candidate one time that we very quickly passed over, who asked something like, what kind of people work there? And we were like, what do you mean? Could you be more specific? Well, like what kind of age groups work there? What kind of socioeconomic background? And we're like, whoa, goodness, that's getting into some kind of protected territory there. So, we can certainly speak to, the value that we place on diversity and inclusion in the workforce and all those kind of things, but asking those kind of questions that are like, that make the interviewer say, why are you asking that exactly? And I think those questions I just listed could be asked in maybe a more friendly way, like, what value does diversity and inclusion play in your workforce? But to ask it in almost like a inquisitive or like, not inquisitive, but to ask it in a way that's like interrogative, almost like a gotcha kind of question, I would steer clear of those.
Fair enough. Marianne, what do you think about asking questions in an interview in that regard?
I'm trying to think of an example of one I've gotten. I don't think I've ever gotten one like that's made me kind of tilt my head and think it was a gotcha moment. But yeah, so I'm honestly, I'm kind of struggling to answer this because I don't think I've had that sort of moment. I will say that this is more on like the mistakes to avoid. If anything, I think I've had experiences where I've been speaking to candidates that also, sorry, forgive me, there's a very loud car alarm going off outside of my window. But I've had experiences where folks are, oh my goodness, this is very loud. I've had experiences where folks are usually, speaking about their experience in more of an arrogant way. So sometimes, if you're expressing your experience, don't, make assumptions that, you are the only one who has this experience. I did have an interview just yesterday where someone was essentially saying, well, this is probably pretty unique and you probably haven't heard this before, but I have this XYZ thing, and like kind of making the assumption that I haven't spoken to anyone like this person before. I think that kind of reads in a way that, doesn't reflect positively upon you. So, I mean, obviously you can still speak about your experiences, talk yourself up, but kind of making assumptions, I think is when you enter into more dangerous territory in that sort of way. So yeah, again, never had any questions, but just when people make assumptions, I think is more of the issue that I've run into before.
Fair enough. So Daniel, you mentioned something that is important and it's on our list, and I want to make sure we give it the amount of airtime that it deserves, and that is diversity and inclusion. So a personal story, when Roderick interviewed me, that was my thoughts and examples around where I had demonstrated an inclusive mindset was part of my interview, and I was glad it was. So how do we go about demonstrating that mindset from the candidate perspective? Because it is, and rightfully so, becoming more and more a focus of most organizations. Tess, do you want to start that?
Yes. So I think this is an awesome question because I feel like it could be somewhat difficult for an interviewee to tackle and ensure that they're giving off that kind of inclusive personality that they may have. I think that's the best way to phrase it. But I think explaining your past experiences or involvement is a great way to showcase how you've been in diverse groups or whatever it may be that is valuable to our organization, right? That pulls in that research again, and the values and the mission and what we value as a company. You can relate your previous experiences or organizations and insight that you have in your life to what the company is doing. And that could be a great way to, again, stand out and show that you're passionate about what you're talking about and can be an asset to the company. Does that make sense?
Most certainly.
Okay. Yeah, I think this
Absolutely.
is an awesome question though, because I feel like it could be a little difficult to navigate and include that in answers that you're kind of mentioning in the interview.
Sure. Marianne, how do you think about this at Artist Year?
Yeah, well, I also want to say I love that you asked this question. This is definitely very top of mind with our organization specifically, just because that's at the root of our mission is, providing access to arts education to folks regardless of, race, socioeconomic status, what have you. So we're very much, driven by that. And we do actually, point blank ask people, have you ever experienced a cultural misunderstanding in your life? How do you navigate that? Have you had experience working with people from different backgrounds than your own? So we kind of just ask it point blank, but often, I will say what we're looking for with those types of responses to a question like that is, just the willingness to speak candidly about, your own experience, about cultural differences. If you're one who, maybe haven't had as much experience with folks different from your own background, that's okay. But as long as you're willing to talk about, how you would go into that situation or navigate that situation. So yeah, just again, it's kind of similar answer to when you're thinking about challenges that you have. So if you're one that doesn't have as much experience in that area, just that willingness to reflect and talk about how you would, be more open to situations and, have a willingness to communicate and be more vulnerable, I guess.
Very good. Very good. Daniel, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think I would just add that I've gotten questions from folks before who say, well, maybe I've never had a diverse experience or I'm not a part of a diverse group who has something that they can, vulnerably share. Well, tell us about how you've been an ally. Allyship is something we're really big about at Cisco and are really trying to equip all of our employees to be allies for groups that maybe they're not, directly a part of. And I'm a part of the Pride group at Cisco. It's our LGBTQ plus organization. And we're trying to equip folks who may not be LGBTQ plus themselves, but maybe want to stand up and, support the community. How do you do that? So how have you done that in your school experiences growing up in your hometown or wherever that might be? Kind of think of those examples. That's something we want to hear about.
Very good. So I love this conversation. Let's extend it a little bit. So we just got a fabulous question and we didn't pre-prepare these, just students are bringing the heat. So thank you guys. Keep those cards and letters coming. You may not know that reference because I'm old compared to you. So here's the question. Is it okay to ask exactly how diverse the environment is? Or should we ask if it's diverse in general? So what are the bounds of what's cool and what isn't? This is a safe place to fail. So let's help them. And anyone can weigh in, and certainly Roderick is an expert in this because of a book that he wrote recently. So you're welcome to add too, of course.
I would just start off with, I think Daniel mentioned this, of the questions that you're phrasing, you need to phrase it the correct way and in the correct manner. So I'm not sure if asking, how diverse the environment, I'm not sure if that's the best manner. I'm sure there's a way you can ask it that it doesn't sound like, oh, how many people are diverse in an organization, right? I would want to kind of steer clear, but you are more than welcome to ask, is this a diverse organization? What do you do? What's in place to include diversity? Those would be good questions.
Very good. Mary Ann, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree. I think overall the phrasing of the question is important, but I mean, I think it's totally okay to ask, does this, gosh, there's some crazy cars happening outside my window today. Sorry, I also am based in Brooklyn and New York for context, so there's often crazy street noise sometimes. But oh my gosh, I was saying, yeah, no, I do think it's important about how you're phrasing that question, and saying, maybe saying, is this a place that values diversity? Is this an organization? Is your organization diverse? I mean, I think you can say those questions, but I think, asking, how many people do you have working within certain backgrounds, or like getting really into it, that sounds like very pointed and, might not be the best way to phrase that. But, saying like, are you a place that values diversity and values, and what things do you have in place for, folks that, aren't from certain backgrounds? Just kind of phrasing things like that. Like, what do you do to help foster an inclusive environment? You can ask questions like that. But yeah, definitely more just about phrasing at the end of the day.
So wonderful. So let's move on to another important and potentially tricky topic. Roderick, I saw you pop up.
Yeah, I did. I wanted to add in a comment on this, because this is very, like I said, this is in my wheelhouse. I just want to make sure while we have the audience here, one of the things I try to coach students on is asking not so much a general question about, hey, how diverse the environment is, but really asking specific to however you identify. If you identify with an underrepresented group, ask what resources that organization has in place to support that group. I think Daniel brought up a good point earlier about Cisco. Cisco is a company I benchmark, so I can definitely tell you they have great business resource groups that they call theirs, I believe, but they're also very transparent with their data. And so when I talk to organizations, I talk about how transparent are you with your workforce data, with what you're doing in the community, with various groups or suppliers, or how are you impacting the community through certain pledges, or volunteering and pro bono hours with the employees, how they're supporting small businesses, women and minority-owned organizations, all these different things that go beyond just an organization's ability to make products and services to sell, but how they impacted the community. And then from an organizational standpoint, how do they train their managers on cultural diversity? How do whether they train their managers on implicit bias? So it's perfectly okay to ask those questions, because you're trying to, like I think Daniel said it earlier, you should view the interview process as a two-way street. So you want to evaluate the organization. These are not questions that any organization should be offended by. And if they are, then I would probably say maybe that may not be the best place for you to work, because that's your answer right there. Because you just say, hey, I'm just curious, how do you support people that may come from these backgrounds, which I may identify with, or like Daniel said, I may be an ally, and I may care how you do support those groups, or what type of training your people leaders get, and how do you recruit, people from, what decisions go into the process for who gets into leadership or who gets into whatever types of advancement opportunities. Just understanding what the fairness of the organization is. And so definitely a lot of organizations make that information transparent, Cisco being one of them. Their cup runneth over. They give you everything and more. And any other company, I would just use Cisco as a benchmark for what is transparent and what is in play of questions you should ask. and then you can just go from there.
Thank you, Rod. Thank you very much. Believe it or not, we're almost at the point where I have to cut this fabulous panel loose. So before we talk about anything else, thank you, thank you, thank you. I really appreciate it. If you want, I still have one more question, but if you want to learn more about these companies, I think without exception, everyone is represented on Handshake. And in UCS, University Career Services, will be happy to help you connect with these wonderful people who have been so generous with their time and expertise. So that's the most important thing. Thank you. We appreciate you. In the couple of minutes we have left, I want to talk about money, because money is like this whole taboo topic, but it's incredibly important because nobody works for free. I mean, I don't know many people who do. So we've got a couple of questions that came in also. So how do you handle this salary question? How much do you want to make? Like, give us some super quick tips on how to handle the topic of money. Marianne, would you like to start?
Sure. Yeah. This is always a tough one. It's a hard question, especially when you're first starting out, but also continues to be something that I talk to my own peers often about, negotiating salaries when you're moving from job to job. But when you're first starting out, I would say, again, research goes a long way. You can use websites like Glassdoor, just look up, the role, the types of things you're being asked to do, and see if you can find something comparable online. That's the first place I would start. So then if somebody does ask you, what are your salary expectations, you at least have something to draw from. And I would always say, it's safer to aim, if there's a range, aim on the little bit of the higher end, because you don't want to go too low and then just get stuck with something that, you're not being totally valued. You're not getting paid what you're worth, essentially. Don't go a crazy amount, but obviously if you're looking up things online, you see the region where you're working, see how that lines up, and maybe shoot a little bit higher than what that salary range would be my advice.
Wonderful. Tess, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think for our internship, we have a pretty structured pay schedule and compensation. So it's very straightforward, and we have a certain kind of process of how we go into detail on that. So from my experience, it might be a little bit different than just that straight question of, what does pay look like, or in that realm. We just kind of cover it through a certain process, but I provide transparency initially on, yes, it is a paid internship, but that, goes more into detail later on. That's kind of my individual look on it. Sorry if it's not too informative.
No, that's perfect. By the way, University Career Services does help people formulate a strategy for negotiating salaries. So you're not flying blind. We work with you to do that. And Daniel, what's different at Cisco? I know negotiation is a thing there. I know you have entry-level positions and positions that are executive level. So how does that operate in Cisco?
I think, as Tess said, we do some of our internship programs. They have that set salary schedule, right? So, there may not be as much room for negotiation there, but I would just say start your process early so you can have that room to compare, other companies and say, hey, what's going to be the best fit for me? I would also say, be able to come to the table, if possible, with a few offers, right, from other companies to say, well, this company's offering me this. Cisco, what can you do to match that? And, if you have those skills that are in demand and we're looking for you, then, we'll do our best we can get you. So don't be afraid to, comparison shop. It's a applicant's market right now, if we can say it that way.
I like the way you think, sir. My goal for all the Tar Heels on the call is that for you guys to get so rich, you don't even take my calls anymore. That's what I want. For all of my students. Guys, believe it or not, I think we're done. Any parting shots? Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. I put my information in the chat as well. If anybody wants to email me directly, you're welcome to. I also said Tess added her LinkedIn. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. And with your permission, and only with your permission, we'll share that with all the people who attended and make sure that we can hook anybody up. We will put this on the University Career Services YouTube channel. So if you're not already internet famous, you might be marginally internet famous at the end of this. We very much appreciate giving back and sharing your expertise for the benefit of everybody around you. So thank you. Have a fabulous day and go Heels.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank
Have a
you. Go
wonderful
Tar
evening.
Heels.
Thank you.
Go Tar Heels. Thank you.
Thank you, Roderick.
You're welcome.